Welcome to Conscious Chronicles. My name is Anthony, and I welcome you to my channel where I explore extraordinary journeys of consciousness and transformation. If you're new here, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell to join our community of seekers and experiencers. Today's story takes us deep into one person's profound journey through death, light, and spiritual awakening. We'll hear a first-hand account that spans mystical encounters, vivid astral projections, and permanent alterations in perception. From beings of pure light to interdimensional travel, this story challenges our understanding of reality while remaining grounded in the raw human experience of integrating such profound changes into daily life. Let us go straight into the narration. Get ready, as this is a long one. Get yourself comfortable and listen carefully in the author's own words. My story begins in June 2013. During a time when I was struggling deeply, feeling suicidal and using drugs, alcohol, and partying in a desperate and unconscious attempt to medicate past trauma. I had no direct spiritual awareness and no interest in spirituality. I barely had any concept of the word. Then, one rainy afternoon, while sitting in a local cafe trying to escape my thoughts, I noticed an elderly man watching me from across the room. There was something different about his presence, a peculiar stillness that seemed to radiate outward. When our eyes met, he smiled and walked over to my table. An encounter with a spiritual teacher had a profound impact on me, leading my mind to become silent. Verbal thoughts ceased, and a serene presence began to shine through. This experience completely changed the direction of my life. Filled with a newfound thirst for spiritual awareness, I spent months in and out of this state of presence while reading spiritual books for the first time. This led me to reach out directly to a teacher who became my primary guide over the coming years. I stopped drinking, smoking, and taking drugs as I chose to prioritize moving deeper into presence. Shortly after my first face-to-face meeting with my teacher, and during a period of self-inquiry inspired by reading Nanya by Ramana Maharshi, I had a dream that led to what I now consider to be an NDE. The dream felt partially lucid, more like waking life than a dream, perhaps a type of astral projection. I was seated in front of a man who was teaching me spiritual practices. He said to me, "Feel the awareness in your left hand," which I did. Then he said, "Feel the awareness in your right hand," which I did. I could feel the sensations in both hands within my awareness. Then he said, "The hands are different," and I felt how the sensations were located within both my left and right hands, different places within my body. Then he said, "The awareness is the same." I noticed that each hand is held within the same awareness, as though the two different hands were unified within it. As I recognized this, it triggered a reaction within me. The dream disappeared, and I felt a sensation as though my spine were rapidly rotating backward to what felt like 360 degrees, an impossible angle. There was a sense of it snapping and a loud crack. As this happened, my experience collapsed and everything became darkness. It's difficult to say whether or not I was embodied at this point. I would say that I was not in a physical body, though I had a vague sense of my physical body, or an astral body, as a kind of unmoving point of experiencing. From this point, I experienced the darkness all around me, which didn't seem to have depth or distance. At some point, time is difficult to accurately determine. A point of light appeared in the distance. It seemed as though it were far away, yet it also didn't really have depth. It slowly began to grow, and as it did, I sensed within me a mix of two clear sensations. One was of an ecstatic joy that seemed within the light, and another was of death-like fear that seemed within the darkness. The light kept growing, and with it, the ecstasy and fear. The ecstasy was like the physical sensation of an orgasm, and the fear felt like death was coming, and that my whole world was going to be torn apart. This mix became so intense that I could hear my own voice screaming within the experience. I've never screamed like that in regular life, though I believe it's what I would sound like if I knew I were about to die. There was a point where I felt a threshold, a barrier between me within the darkness and the light itself. The fear and ecstasy had become so intense that it was totally overwhelming, and I felt completely out of control. However, I also felt a presence there with me, which was somehow guiding or moving me. At a pivotal moment, I felt invited to cross the threshold from the darkness to the light. Though I had the desire to, I also felt completely overwhelmed by the death-like quality of it and was unable to choose to cross. It felt like crossing the line would mean I would be eradicated. At this point, the presence that was with me became more powerful, and I felt it push me over the threshold. As I crossed over, the darkness completely disappeared, and along with it, the sense of death-like fear. All I experienced was golden light like an ocean. That was all I could see. With it, I also experienced ecstasy, which was like a pristine orgasm that was not distorted by any other experience. The absence of fear was an immense relief, and the presence of the ecstasy was pleasurable in a way, though mostly it was simply incredibly intense and very overwhelming. I remained in this state for an unknown period of time. It didn't seem possible to experience such an intense state for so long, yet it remained at that same level of intensity for as long as I was there. It's difficult to put an experience this intense into words, so I repeat for emphasis. It was the most intense experience of my life, and one that I don't believe has a parallel to regular human experiences. After a time, I began to wonder if my body was okay, and felt myself return to it. I came into my body and felt myself as though I were in my physical body and also partially still in that ocean of light. I felt intense ecstatic energy moving up and down my spine at an extremely rapid rate. It had the same orgasmic quality, though now less pristine, as I was also experiencing my physical form. I was aware that my body was absolutely drenched in sweat as I lay in my bed. My body was in an odd posture as the energy was so forceful it had manipulated my spine and the rest of my body. Following the NDE, I experienced aftershocks. I lay in bed a day or so later and wondered if the sensations would return, as I wanted them to. As I considered this, I wondered if they'd feel like an uncoiling at the base of my spine. As I wondered about this, I started to imagine it. As I imagined it, it started to happen. The same orgasm-like energies began to spiral, like a soft touch circling at the base of my spine that built until it took on a life of its own. It gathered into the same energy as during the primary experience, moving up and down my spine while I experienced ecstatic orgasm-like sensations. Not long after this experience, I visited my brother in his apartment and noticed what looked like a strange, vibrating light within all the objects in his apartment. I didn't pay much attention at the time and didn't say anything to him about it. From then on, though, I noticed my vision had permanently altered. I now saw the golden white light of the ocean I had been in, within and around, everything appearing in my vision, though it took me some time to draw the conclusion this was the same light. This experience has never left me in the years since the NDE happened. I see all objects as transparent and glowing with an ephemeral golden white light. I also see a kind of golden white static of light that covers everything, whether my eyes are open or closed. This static is made of millions of individual points of light that fluctuate in their illumination, so as to seem to vibrate to a certain frequency. My experience of this changes from time to time, sometimes being more in the background of my experience, sometimes more in the foreground, but always there while I am in my waking state. The experience of it intensifies during certain life events. For example, if my partner is talking about a deep and authentic aspect of her life, I see the light more deeply and clearly within her, along with other phenomena, such as her face shifting to resemble an altered version of herself. Similarly, if I read a book by a mystic, I may sense the light more strongly in the words and within me. The light feels both within me and outside me at the same time, as though the outer layer of my sensory experience, with its inclusion of depth and separation, is a film over which and through which the light is. I sense this light deeply within my heart, and it resonates within the energy fields of my body. My partner recently read about Hildegard of Bingen, who experienced visions like this for the majority of her life. She shared this with me, and I was deeply touched to read Hildegard's words, as it's rare that I come across people who describe this same profound, heart-centered experience. One touching aspect was that Hildegard also feared sharing these experiences with others. I have heard the same of the Oglala Lakota medicine man. Black Elk, who nearly died, had profound visions and returned with a sense of an inner power within him, like a light. This was confirmed to him by the medicine man of his tribe, who looked at him strangely and said he has something special to do, that he sees a light, like a power within him. Black Elk also feared sharing his experiences with others, which surprised me due to my prejudiced belief that First Nations people would all be open and supportive of such experiences. Along with the light, I also experienced other events that I had for much of my life considered exclusive to the realms of fantasy and science fiction. Sometime after the primary event, I first experienced leaving my physical body to enter my astral body and travel to other realms of existence. This happened spontaneously as I was sleeping one evening. I found myself floating in a strange, vivid place, feeling very light, with colors of greens, blues, and purples more vibrant than I had ever seen. I felt multiple presences with me and felt them move me through this space. I felt their voices in my mind without words, but rather a kind of feeling of them within my mind, which I understood. I did not see them. They explained events to me, such as when I saw human beings in bubbles floating in space. They said these were people who were dreaming, which made total sense in that context. They guided me through this space, and I felt like I was leaving the level of the earthly realm. I came out of that realm and was in what I would describe as a village. though I felt my perception of it was being passed through my mind in a way I could interpret rather than seeing it totally accurately. I saw many beings going about their business. They didn't seem at all bothered by my presence and were focused on their purpose, moving around in an easygoing yet energized way, like they knew exactly what they were doing and felt completely comfortable doing it. The ones I can remember looked almost like friendly goblins, though again, this may be my mind interpreting them through my current level of knowledge, rather than actually what they looked like. The presence was still with me, and I was guided to a marketplace where I went up to a stall and was told only a human could hold what I needed to collect from there. I picked up the object from a gnome-like merchant and was taken to a pool. I asked what the pool was, and was told it was the entry point to the consciousness of another human being. I was told to put the object into the pool, which I did. My intuition on this is that I was helping the growth of consciousness by bringing inspiration from this realm into the mind of a certain human being, so that it could grow and bring a higher vibration to them and through them to the earth. Another time, I was in a dream, which I suspect was actually an astral projection, where I was myself as a child, lying in the bed I grew up in, a place of traumatic memories. As I lay there, I saw a light outside my window. I felt terror like I did during the tunnel of light experience. A being made of golden white light and shaped like a human, but without discernible features, like the outline of a human filled with and radiating golden white light, was there. It floated gracefully over to me. I was absolutely terrified. The experience felt completely real, as though I was in my room, and suddenly, a being made of light was floating through my window. The being stared at me with incredible intensity. I couldn't see eyes, and its face was directed at me, implying it was focused on me. Its unflinching gaze was terrifying in a way that is difficult to describe, though I can reflect now that the terror was the darkness within me fearing the light. The being held my hands, and I felt a connection between us. I could feel my fear literally moving out of me and into this being. It remained unflinching and lifted me with it, and we floated out of the window. We were then in a car with me in the back seat, and the other in the front passenger seat, looking back at me and continuing to hold my hands and look intensely at me. My fear continued to move into it, and eventually I felt calmer than I can recall being in regular life, except possibly while on drugs. As with the previous experience, I had some awareness. I wasn't really in a car that was driving down the motorway, but rather my mind was seeing it in this way, so I could comprehend it safely. What was actually happening was that I was being taken to another dimension. After a while we arrived, and the being of light introduced me to two beings from this new realm. They looked human to me, though I knew they weren't. They seemed calm and casual, as if they were expecting me. The being of light started to float into the sky toward a ray of light that was shining through the clouds. It passed through the cloud, and I didn't see it again. I feel sad, even recalling this, as it feels like such a loss to lose contact with such an incredible being that had drawn the fear out of me. I wanted to be with it and still do. I was also sad at the time and kept asking my new guides when they would come back. They calmly and amusedly told me that it had gone and that I didn't need to worry about it. They took me through what I saw as rainy streets in a typical English town. They took me to a fast food restaurant where I picked up a meal to take with us. They took me to a school where I was in a classroom filled with children and a teacher at the front. The teacher welcomed me and the children stared at me. The teacher asked me to get something from a cupboard located on the other side of the room, past all the children who were seated at old-style desks. I tried to move through them, but their desks started getting closer and closer together, so they pressed into me. I felt like I was being compressed and felt frightened, embarrassed, and out of control. Then I was back in my body. I suspect this classroom was some kind of training ground for otherworldly beings to learn about human beings, though I can't be certain of that. There were other times when I experienced some type of astral experience. These would happen while I was in bed during a phase of sleep. There was a predictable sequence of events that would happen, including a lucid feeling, a sense of intense inner contraction, and undulating like the fabric of my world was coming undone, a sense of acceleration, letting go, intense and otherworldly sounds, the presence of beings, often angelic, where I would hear their voices calling to me. And eventually, if I was able to let go enough, I would experience a death-like state and then leave my body. As these experiences unfolded, so did other spiritual experiences. Following the near-death experience, I was on sick leave from work. I stumbled across some channeling videos by Paul Selig. In one, his guide spoke through him saying they are available to anyone, and all we need to do is turn toward them. One morning, as I lay in bed, I had a dialogue in my mind asking myself questions about my life. I noticed that my head was gently shaking or nodding in response to the questions without me even realizing it. As I noticed it, it occurred to me that these could be my guides, so I asked if this was the case, and my head softly nodded. This was the beginning of my experience of channeling inner guidance, which has evolved over the years. I consider it a form of telepathy, as the experience is often non-verbal, and very similar to the experience I had during my first astral projection. It is like a connection, in knowing that moves in a way similar to a conversation, but often wordless and based on a movement of feeling. That said, it can and does make use of words to support the communication of the desired energies. Relatively recently, I have begun to channel with my partner, as she asks questions about different aspects of this inner guidance, with myself acting as a conduit between them. The process of channeling can be active where I intentionally invoke a specific being, build a rapport with it, and commune with it, or passive where a being comes to me without my invocation of it, and I may not even realize consciously that I'm interacting with it. These experiences of inner guidance have been some of the most profound guidance of my life and offer a wealth of emotional and practical support that I had never conceived of as possible before it began. A few months after the near-death experience, I began feeling unusual sensations in my body. I recall sitting at my computer at work and feeling air moving through my arm. It felt pleasant and light like a breeze, though it was inside my arm. At a similar time, I felt a tight pressure in the center of my forehead, like someone pushing their finger into the space between my eyes. I knew so little about inner energy at this time that I actually went to the bathroom to check my face in the mirror. I was concerned my forehead was somehow spasmodically frowning. In the months following these experiences, I felt similar pressures in other locations, such as my throat, the top of my head, my solar plexus, and other areas. I had a vague memory of the chakra system and looked up a diagram of it. I was not particularly surprised to see the places where I felt pressure shown as major chakras of the human body, energy centers that come open during spiritual awakening. In the present, some years later, I now experience numerous streams of energy flowing through my body, which include focal points at the 7 major chakras, though also includes many thousands of minor chakras that vary in size and energy flow all throughout my body. My intuition tells me my inner energy field will open in much the same way as how I currently see golden white energy. Hundreds of thousands of individual points of light, all flowing and radiating together. These energies move in ways relative to my emotional feelings, in direct response to my internal and external life experiences. At times of stress, they constrict and I feel them tighten. This can be a very unpleasant experience, which I want to highlight strongly, as the negative is all too often denied in spiritual circles. To my mind, these contractions are just as much a part of the journey of awakening as the expansive movements, which tend to be more pleasant. As my inner awareness grows, I see that the human body knows far more than human beings are typically conscious of. Our body knows the truth of our past and can predict our future. It's incredibly important to listen to it and learn from it, including the enormous amount of pain it holds. It can tell us about our ancestors and about the whole of human and cosmic history, as well as the direction for ourselves, our species, our planet, and the interdimensional cosmos. If listening to this has left you feeling more confused than before you started, then don't worry. This is just the account of one person. You'll have your own experiences and evolve your own understanding. If you've experienced something similar to what I've described and are trying to make sense of it all, I recommend exploring some grounding techniques, spending time in nature, and giving yourself plenty of time and space to let this all sink in. What you've experienced is a massive shift in consciousness that your psyche and body will need time to integrate. At times it will be painful, but it's okay. You'll get through it, and you'll smile to yourself as it all starts to come together. Thank you for joining me on another episode of Conscious Chronicles. If you found value in today's story, please take a moment to like this video and share your own experiences in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell to stay connected with more profound stories of transformation. Until next time, stay curious, stay open, and remember, every experience, no matter how extraordinary, is part of our shared human journey. Stay safe, everyone. and I'll see you in the next episode.